So last week we learned about the principles of linear perspective, and this week we're going to learn to apply it to a real world situation. Like I mentioned, the concept of perspective, linear perspective, in 1 and 2 point perspective is pretty straightforward. All parallel lines that recede from the viewer meet at the same point, called the vanishing point, and that point is on the horizon line. The difficulty, like I mentioned, is applying it, is knowing when you're looking at a real world situation, what kind of line you're looking at and where it should be going. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to talk you through um, a drawing using an example from a previous student's work. And hopefully that will help you construct and build your own drawing. So if we look at this photograph, for instance, all the lines going away from the viewer that are parallel, and the ceiling is parallel to the floor, which is parallel to this wooden piece of something on the wall, or this light kind of table structure in this very modern office. Everything goes to the vanishing point, and that vanishing point is the eye level, in this case, of the camera. So we come straight across for the eye level, we see it's slightly taller than the woman sitting at the desk. So the photographer was either a man who or a woman who was taller sitting down, or the camera was on a tripod. If it was higher up, we would say the person was standing up. And if it was kind of at eye level with these two people, we'd say, well, maybe the person is sitting down and took the picture. So what I want you to do first is to select a room that you want to work from and face a wall. Don't look into the corner, either of these two corners. Look straight onto that wall so you have a flat surface that you're looking at. If you don't have that, you don't have 1 point perspective. So that's the first thing. Make sure you make the right decision. Sorry, wrong direction. Okay, so here's a drawing by a student last year. This is the art room at KCC. If we were having classes, this is what you would see. Obviously, the room's full of tables and chairs and easels and all that stuff. So whatever room you choose, you can kind of empty it out if you want in your imagination, or just literally move the furniture. And what I want you to do is face a wall, just like this student has, but make sure you leave enough space around that wall to get the diagonal lines going back. Otherwise, we can't really see the perspective. So the first thing is to draw that back wall in completely accurate proportions. We need to get that rectangle, that shape, perfect, because if that's off, everything else becomes off. So we're going to use our citing techniques, the technique of extending your hand, closing one eye, looking at the tip of your pencil and your thumb, and measuring one particular side of this and seeing how it relates to another side. So here's an example. You see the thumb and the pencil. You're going to get a measurement, and who cares what the number is? It doesn't matter. What matters is how many of these measurements that are measuring the height of what you're looking at go into the width of what you're looking at. So we call that A. Then if we turn our pencil to the side and measure how many times A goes into that, we see that it's 3 and a bit. However you conceive of a bit is entirely up to you. 3.2, 3 and a quarter, 3 and a smidgen, whatever language works, works. And then we take that information and we go to our paper and we draw a rectangle, making sure that we keep space around it. We take the height of our rectangle and we do it 3 times and then a little bit more. And that's going to give us our back wall. So this is the back wall of that student's drawing. Now you have to get all that stuff on that wall drawn in proportion. All right. We can't find our vanishing point until we know what we're looking at. And if we go back here, it's just a piece of white paper. It doesn't help us at all. We need information. So we got to figure out maybe where the door is, or maybe where the middle of the room is, or maybe where the divisions of, anything to help get us started. So we might as well start what we've worked with already, this height, right? We've measured this. We know what that is. And so we could say, okay, let's measure that over from the side. How far do we come from the side before we get to the side of the door? Well, based on our measurement of the height, we can determine this. If we start from this end, we're going to hit roughly the middle of the door. So if we come in a bit, we're going to get our door. We know that this is about 2/3 the height of this. So we estimate that and put that line in. We go to the other side and we think, okay, 1, 2, 3, 4 windows. roughly the third window is again one more height over. And so we begin to sort of plot these little markers and these little points. And those are the things that are going to help us. I don't want you just to guess it. And then from there, I want you to determine where your vanishing point is. And that's going to be straight ahead. So if you're sitting to the side, it's got to be over here. If you're sitting over here, it'll be there. And then you have to determine the height. Now, if you're sitting down, one trick is to just bring your chair over to the wall, sit down, and look at the wall and see where would you put an X. If you've got things on the side of the wall coming back, I don't know, railings or windows, and you can see how high you are to the window, then when it hits the wall, you know it's going to be that height. You just have to get this completely accurate. So do not arbitrarily stick it anywhere. All right. So now we have our wall, we have our vanishing point, and we know that from that vanishing point, if we go to the four corners of the room, this is going to determine the side wall, because that's the ceiling line, that's the floor line. So now we have two walls, a ceiling, and a floor. And we have some information drawn on here. All right, so now we've got to draw backwards from the wall. Okay, don't start drawing out here and sneak into the wall. Start from here and come back. And we see we have cabinets on the side. All right, we also have a window line here, which I'll come to in a bit. So let's start with this cabinet. This is the corner of the room. When the cabinet hits the wall, it's like a rectangle. So try to imagine what that rectangle is. It'll be this, I've outlined it in red. So it's basically this shape here. So if I tore the cabinets out, I'd have this mark on the wall where the cabinet touched the wall. We can use that to draw from this point, and this point, line it up with our vanishing point, and keep going. And that's going to give us the front of our cabinets and the top of our cabinet. Okay, so then that'll be like that. We notice on the other side there is another cabinet coming out from the wall. There's the height, there's the bottom. Again, we look at it, put a rectangle in there, and that'll be the height of the rectangle. Notice the top of the cabinet lines up with our eyes, which is why we can't see anything on top. This one is a little bit lower, which is why we can see just a tiny bit of the top surface. Okay, so we draw those in, and that gives us the cabinets on the left side. So we continue to build from that. We've got this soffit shape on top. Just kind of estimate the lines. You know, is it a little bit to the first line and a lot to the second line? However you want to conceive it, however you want to put it in there. You know, use what you've got here to measure. You know, maybe now you can measure a window and you can compare a window to that. But then you just put those lines in and notice what happens on the sides. They're very different. So the bottom of this just literally lines up here and then goes up. But here, the corner is not in the corner, it's further back. So now we have to draw separate lines to that. I'm going to just click out of that. There we go. So now we get two more lines there, two lines here, and we continue to build. So these two will be this. We get a third line. We could even go to the corner of the window, draw a line from here. So what we're doing basically is we're starting from here and we're drawing out towards ourselves, going through the side. And every line will go back, but it has to start with correct proportions, getting everything in the right place. All right, now there's another kind of proportion, the proportion of the sides. How do you get that right? So if you notice here, the cabinets come out, and at this point right here, they cut back. There's a little hole right there. That's because there's a sink unit. So this goes out, and then it turns, and then it continues here. So you might be thinking, how far down here do I go? Where do I find this line? And so this is very important. If I'm looking for that line, where is that corner where it changes? Where, for instance, does the end of this bulletin board end? You know, does it keep coming all the way out here? Where do I find that? So one easy trick is to imagine the vertical, go straight up with your eye or hold a pencil and estimate this distance again with your pencil doing citing. So if I measure that distance with my pencil, I get this unit. Now I've already drawn stuff here. I can take this unit and see, does it relate to anything I've already drawn, but not in your drawing, on the actual room. So you measure this part of the room, and then you bring it over and you say, where else in the room does it coincide? Well, it just happens to be pretty much the same width as this. And it's always good to check it twice, because go somewhere else if you can. And it appears to be the same width as that. So what you do is you measure these in the room, get a measurement, come to your drawing, start there, go back, and that's going to be your line right there. Okay, hopefully that makes sense. Same thing here. You're looking at the room. You'll cite this distance from the end of the bulletin board to the corner of the room, and you'll go back to your room and you'll say, does that distance match anything else? And you happen to notice that it's pretty much the width of the door. So you measure the width of the door, you go back, you plot that on your paper, put a dot there, and that vertical line is going to be the edge of the bulletin board. Okay? So it's a matter of just imaginatively applying all these different ways of using these techniques, of using sight lines, of using citing to build your drawing. So everything we've learned so far in the course can be used to construct this drawing. Okay, so now an important thing about one-point perspective, which some of you had issues with in the drawings you did last week and the week before. Okay, so let me explain what I mean by that. So what I want you to do is, wherever you're sitting in your room, look up to a corner. So you face a wall, and then go to the right corner, or the left, it doesn't matter, and notice where the ceiling hits the wall. Okay, what kind of shape does it make? And if you look up, you'll notice it makes kind of a Y shape. All right, so if that's one side of the room, there's your Y shape, look to the other side of the room and look at that corner, and what do you see? And again, you should see something like a Y shape. Now you can see we're going to be running into a problem, because if we connect the Y shapes, we get this really funny bend from a diagonal line to a straight line. We know there's no bend, it's one continuous line, but if we do that, we might end up with a curved line. Now, granted, this is exaggerated, but there's something wrong. It looks like a Y on this side, it looks like a Y on this side, and it looks straight in the middle, but it doesn't look anything like this. Right? So this is what you're going to encounter when you're making these drawings. All right? And the problem is, maybe you want to stop the video and think about it for a while, see if you can figure out why this is happening. Wait. Okay, if you're back, hopefully you figured it out. If you haven't, the answer is you're actually combining 3 different viewpoints in one drawing. For what we're doing, which is an architectural one-point perspective, you can't do this. This is called modern art, right? This is where you look to the side and you get one view, you look to the middle, you get another view, you look to the other side, get a third view, and you combine them all in one view. We want to avoid that. We're making a drawing that's artificial. It's looking straight with one eye and not moving your head. But obviously when you're actually making the drawing, you're going to be moving your head and your eyes. So you're going to see all these differences. And what I want you to do is ignore those differences. Know that we're making a particular type of drawing that has a particular set of rules, and I want you to follow those rules just for the sake of making this drawing. Okay? What we really want to have is something that looks like this, so that when we make our room, it's going to look like that. So it's straight across the top, straight down. The only lines that are angled or moving are the side lines that are parallel to each other and receding, meaning going away from us to a vanishing point. So why do I say that? Because this is the kind of thing you're going to get involved with. So this is an old drawing. You can see the eye level. All the lines go to the human eye. If you turn your head, all these lines shift. You turn your head the other way, all the lines shift the other way. So you get a very complex image. What we want is a very simple camera-based image. So here's an image we saw from last week, a basic kind of room. And let's say, for instance, you wanted to put some sort of box in it. Maybe this is a cabinet, maybe it's a table, maybe it's a shelf, I don't know. Notice that the bottom line in this drawing is horizontal. That's because it's parallel to the back wall. All right, remember there's only 3 types of lines in this kind of drawing: horizontal, vertical, or diagonal. All right, so this is correct. This comes out of the wall, this goes up the wall. But what happens if you actually see something like this in the room and you turn your head and you look over there? All of a sudden, this structure, which is a box, becomes 2-point perspective. Right? You look this way, it's 1-point perspective. You look this way, it'll become 2-point perspective, meaning it'll do this. One side will go back and another side will go back, and you will be tempted to angle this line. All right? Don't do this. The rules of the 1-point perspective drawing is if this box is against the wall and it's coming straight out at 90-degree angle, it has to be a horizontal line in the drawing. So we can, we'll be looking, this is how it should look. All right, and we want to avoid doing this. So I saw in many of your drawings this last week, this was happening. And this is a natural result of turning your head and looking. But for the convention that we're using for this drawing, I want you to do this. Because the same thing happens here. This is horizontal, but if you actually look at the corner, this line will go up slightly. This line will actually come down because you're going to turn this shape into a 2-point perspective shape. And like the room we saw with the 3 points of view, it doesn't work. We want to have 1 point of view in this drawing. So I'll finish up with a couple of student drawings, again, of the buildings at KCC. You can see everything's going back. There's a vanishing point there. Obviously, there's no wall, but they just estimated this shape. And then you can see all the detail they put in. So we're doing it in pencil. It's contour. There's no shading. Keep your lines in or take them out if you want. It's entirely up to you. But start from the back and draw this way. Don't start here and try to squeeze everything in, because trust me, you'll run into problems. Another view from the buildings at KCC, offices, water fountain, doors. Again, everything goes back. All lines are either horizontal, vertical, or diagonal to the vanishing point.